Thank you very much. I also couldn't help but think, one of these days I'm going to wreck having this happen. But I see a lot of these where somebody will put a placard or they'll have something on a car, and I want to get a picture of it because I find it interesting. And I saw one several months ago that I took a picture of, and I laughed. It goes like this. The placard said, "My wife asked me why I was talking so low. I said I didn't want Mark Zuckerberg to hear us." And then she laughed, and I laughed, and Suri laughed, and Alexa laughed. You are all growing up and continuing to flourish in an era that's going to be very different, that has been. I think the other thing, how many of you were working? Raise your hand during the pandemic. I have to tell you what, in 50 years of working in schools, we'll spend the next 50 years talking about that. And at the end of the day, your work was never more appreciated than what it was then. And I saw so many people who would reach out to kids and to make connections because it mattered more than you can ever imagine. And it was frustrating and anxiety producing. And I hope that someday when people ask you to reflect on that, I hope you say the same thing that I said about an experience I had in 2020 just before it all started. In 2020, I went to Goodyear, Arizona, because I'm a big baseball fan. And in Goodyear, Arizona is where the Cleveland Indians and the Cincinnati Reds train. And I had spent 3 months getting ready to participate in a baseball fantasy camp. So yes, I was in the gym taking 150 ground balls every morning, swinging, throwing, all those things. I waited too long. Years ago, next door to Warren, although I have to say the first varsity coaching experience I had in baseball, we beat Warren. I could still remember it. But anyway, I got to participate. Now, I won't tell you all about it. I'm just going to give you the ending. True story. A week later, I go to get on the plane to come back to Columbus. I could not lift my left arm because I had torn a biceps. It was completely purple. I couldn't lift my right leg because I'd pulled a groin muscle. My left foot hurt so bad I was sure I had broken something from a line drive that I didn't get down on quick enough off the first base side, but I wasn't going to cry about it. I get on the plane. We fly back to Columbus. I go see an orthopedic surgeon on Monday who had given me a shot in my knee to go before I ever went to the camp. I walked in, he looked at me, and I said, "I don't know what I did. I don't know what you have to do, but I just want to tell you one thing. It was worth it." And I hope that when you look back on those darkest days of this pandemic and the things that you had to do to make it work, I hope that you say it was worth it, because you have no idea that those connections, what they have meant to kids. And I have watched this in so many places. So I want to say thank you. I want to start very quickly with a story, a study, a metaphor, and a quotation, if I can remember all that. The story is this. I'm sure no one in here knows who Sven Nader is. But I'll tell you, Sven Nader was a great basketball player. He was my age. He graduated from high school in '69. He was one of those kids that really grew tall. And his freshman year of college, he was the junior college player of the year. So in 1970, freshmen couldn't play on the varsity in colleges. So now in '71, he's going to be a sophomore, and he wants to play on the best men's Division I team in the country. Now, arguably in 1971, if you wanted to play on the best men's team, now I realize there's some Kentucky fans here who will argue with what I'm going to suggest you would have wanted to play for, but probably most people would have said the team you wanted to play for was UCLA. Coach John Wooden, who had won several championships. So Sven Nader went to Coach Wooden and said, "I want to play for you." Coach Wooden said, "Look, Sven, you can play for anybody in the country. You can start. But if you come here, you're not going to play. You're definitely not going to start. I have a center. His name's Bill Walton. He's the same grade as you. You're not going to start here. And I can't promise you that you'll play very much. But Sven said, I want to play for you. So finally, John Wooden gave him a scholarship. He had said to him several times, look, Sven, you can play anywhere and start. He said, no, I want to play for you. So he gave him a scholarship. 3 years later, Sven graduated. He graduated with 3 NCAA rings, championships, and true to his word, he never started a game. Now, he played every night against the best players in the country. And Sven was unusual because during the NBA draft that spring, he became the first NBA draftee that had never started a college game. He went on and had a great pro career and a career after that. I tell that story for one reason. Who you surround yourself with does matter. You want people who challenge you. You want people who make you better. That's what Sven did. And it turned out to be the best decision he could ever do. Within this group will be a network where you're going to make some friends you'll have for the rest of your life. But you want people who will listen to you, who will challenge you, who will make you an achiever. Because if that's one of your strengths, achievers want to accomplish things. And you'll have people around you who will raise the expectations, but will also listen, give you advice, especially when you need it most. So there's my story. My study is this. It just was chronicled in the book that came out a couple of months ago. It's the largest study of human behavior in the history of this country. It started with a group of sophomore men at Harvard in 1938. It's been called a variety of things, most often the Grant study, but they followed 269 sophomores at Harvard starting in 1938, which interestingly John Kennedy was a member of for the rest of their lives. Shortly after that, they added another 650 kids, teenagers from inner city Boston. Because let's be honest, if you're a white male at Harvard University in 1938, your chances of landing pretty good are pretty high. They added all of these others. They have now followed them their entire lives. Many of them are deceased. They're now into the third generations. The book is called The Good Life. It's written by Mark Schultz and Robert Wattinger. It just came out a couple of months ago, but they really share the research on what constitutes a good life. I'm going to synthesize this 320-page book in one word: relationships. That's it. But the engine for it is not self, it is connections to others. So if you want a firm, reliable indicator of both happiness, good health, economic fortune, it absolutely rests with relationships and connections to others. And it's one of the reasons I think about southeastern Ohio, and I've been blessed to be in lots of different states doing work in other countries and on and on and on. But at the end of the day, there is no place that I am prouder to say that I am from than to say I am from southeastern Ohio, where relationships are what it's all about. Are you kidding? Even if I go back to my hometown now and somebody were to, I'd say, well, where does such and such live? I don't know all the streets in my town, the names. Well, they live up where Eleanor Smith used to live. You know, she's the one that had these 3 kids. One of them went, oh, yeah, because built-in relationships is how we define ourselves, who we know. So at the end of the day, connections to other people really do matter. And in this neck of the woods, there's no question, because it becomes, but it's also clearly the recipe for a great life. There's a wonderful story told about Death Valley, if you've ever been there in California. It has the highest recorded temperature ever, 134 degrees. It's a barren wasteland. But in the fall of 2004, something strange began to happen there. They began to get rain. They get about a half inch a year. They got 6 inches of rainfall late in the fall of 2004 and early 2005. And then something happened that had never happened. It hasn't happened since. There were wildflowers all over the basin of Death Valley. My metaphor for this is a reminder to you that under the right conditions, anything can grow. And more importantly, anyone can grow. But it comes back to relationships. So those matter. And that metaphor that under the right conditions, anyone can flourish. And it's hard. How many of you are actively teaching in high school right now? Okay. Someone once asked me, said, did you like all the kids that you taught? I said, are you kidding? I didn't always like the ones I had at home. You have those moments when you expect something, but it is you to see in someone what they cannot see in themselves. And it is far better to over-expect. I can remember when NCLB was first passed. It was actually signed in Hamilton, Ohio. And people would say to me, you really think all kids can learn and that in 2014, 100% of the kids will be proficient in English, language, arts, and mathematics? I said, no, I don't think they will. I don't think it will be at 100%. Well, then how can you be for a... I said, wait a minute. Do you want to put a sign out in front of your school? Can you imagine a sign? Welcome to East Elementary School. Some of the kids here will learn. Maybe yours will be one of them. Poor performance is not a sin, but low aim is. So as adults, we want to have high expectations for each other and for kids. My quotation is, the grass isn't greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. You have to decide what you want to water. What is it that you're passionate about? What is it through your influence and circle that you can do? If you water ideas, you get innovation. If you water rules, you get compliance. If you water relationships, you'll get engagement of others. So decide what it is you want to water. In our sessions this afternoon, we're going to talk about you, because what Gallup gives us through the strengths assessment is a language to talk about things. So, for example, I know in here if somebody has responsibility, if that's one of your top, you'll work harder to accomplish something and to follow up than any pressure any boss could ever put on you. I thought Director Murnick's description of achiever is absolutely right, because sometimes achievers can be so focused on accomplishment, and they've surrounded themselves with other people who say, look, we need to remember to celebrate. We need to remember, and that's where people with empathy may be your number one. Say, hey, we need to do this. I'll show you this afternoon, because we're going to talk about you and your reports and your strengths. There are no bad strengths. There are 34 of those, and you get your top 5. You want to know how unique you are? For somebody to have the same 5, there's about a 1 in 280,000 chance. So think about that. I don't know what the population of all of southeastern Ohio is. Certainly no more than 280,000. You're the only one who has your report. Now, how unique are you to have the same 5 in the same order? Because these are in order of whom you are. 1 in 33 million. Now we're looking at the entire Midwest. So that's how unique you are. So you bring your unique strengths to it, and the question is not look at your strengths and say, well, what should I become? No. It's not a selection tool. It's a developmental tool. You say, given what my job is, given my role, how can I use my strengths to be better at it? Because strengths are an incredible, use of strengths are an incredible proxy for happiness, for productivity. There's a reason lots of employers, particularly in the private sector, want to know the strengths. It's not to identify people. It's to, in fact, know them better so I can work with them and surround myself with good teams, because those things do matter. I want to share just a partial interview. There's a book by John Clifton that came out last year called Blind Spot, in which one of the things they did, Gallup did this, they asked people to picture a ladder. They've done this survey all over the world. Say, picture a ladder with 10 steps, 0 to 10. 10 is, if you're standing on step 10, you're living your best possible life. If you're at 0, you're living your worst possible life. Now, they first posed this question about 17 years ago. What they find is people who were living their best possible life, that was about 3.3% of the population who had taken it. How about living their worst possible life? About 1.7. Now we fast forward to 15 years to last year. What was it last year? The good news. The people who said they are living their best possible life, they're at a 10. That number doubled, or that percentage doubled. The other news, the people who were at 0, it had quadrupled. So if anger, sadness, disappointment were a stock, those are up. If joy, happiness, and fulfillment were a stock, it was down worldwide. I want to give you a short interview that took place. This was in Vietnam. And I'm just going to read the interviewer and what they said. Interviewer, in talking to a woman who was a factory worker in Ho Chi Minh City, a shoe factory. Do you feel well rested yesterday? Did you feel well rested yesterday? No, I'm working 12 hours a day at the factory, but I don't have enough money. Were you treated with respect all day yesterday? Don't know. I will get into fights if I don't finish my target. Did you smile and laugh a lot yesterday? Silence. Sis, are you still there? Person struggles to answer. You can talk to me if you have anything to share. Woman, crying. No one ever asked me whether I'm happy or not. Part of what the blind spot suggests is we ought to also look at how people are living their lives. We should care about their well-being. That in countries, of course, we're looking at GNP and GDP and a whole host of economic indicators, but he makes the argument we should also look at well-being. That's why I like strengths, because it's a piece. It's not a silver bullet. It's a piece to get at who people are as a person. I can remember at Battelle for Kids years ago, with teachers' permission, we gave a student survey because we were trying to calibrate a student survey to help us further interest. And all these teachers said, yeah, go ahead, because we weren't using it to evaluate somebody. We weren't weaponizing it. But one of the questions on it was, my teacher cares about me. Well, they said, of course, ask that question. And then we got the answers back from nearly 10,000 students of teachers across 3 states. And less than 50% of the kids had answered that positively. Now, the teachers were shocked. I was shocked. But it was an incredible reminder of your intention may not be somebody else's reality. So strengths gives us a window with which to know kids. So you can say, well, even with all of you, I've had people say, well, Jim, I pretty much know what my strengths are. I say, you may well know. But have you ever been to a karaoke bar? Hell, there's people there think they can sing too. So the idea of having an assessment about you, and we'll talk about this afternoon, does that describe you? Is that who you are? Because this is an incredibly stable measure. It follows you over time. It's not like, well, you know, last year I was this year I'm going to be. We have skills that we're always working on. But at the end of the day, Peter Drucker said, it is easier to take somebody's strengths and make them outstanding than it is to take their worst weaknesses and make them mediocre. We all have to overcome weaknesses. But at the end of the day, the real money is to concentrate on people's strengths and to absolutely acknowledge that they have those strengths, because it'll make you a better leader. I thought what Director Murnix, when she talked about achievement and having somebody with her to help do that, That was as good an example as I've ever seen of what self-awareness looks like, and to know that. So you want to do strengths because it'll make you a better leader. Self-awareness matters. Number two, you can build better teams by letting other people do what they do best and shine, and giving them opportunities. But the most important reason for using strengths in my mind is it improves engagement. If people are engaged, they're more likely to be happier, satisfied, and productive. There's a reason they do this in the private sector. They want people to be more productive. There's lots of room to grow in this, but it'll give you a tool about you. And it's not to make you into something, it's to describe you, and we'll have that opportunity. So think of strengths as your superpowers. They're really talents. It's who you are. They become strengths when you practice them. And it's just a reminder we're all different. For example, let's suppose I gave you a choice. Somebody you really knew well or knew a family well, and they asked you to either help write the eulogy or give the eulogy. How many would rather help write the eulogy? How many would rather give it? Okay? You get the idea. How many of you, I'm just sort of curious now, how many of you are the kind of person that if you get in an elevator, you put your head down, would never talk to somebody, don't even like looking at people? And on the other hand, how many of you get in an elevator, you immediately strike up a conversation with whoever is in the elevator? How many of you in the first group, put your head down? How many talk to them? Ask them. We're all different. How many of you, if we went to your house, we went to your closet, we went to your garage, everything is organized, you know where everything is, you keep it that way, and you're irritated when somebody disrupts it. And on the other hand, how many of you are you kidding? I know those shoes are in here someplace. How many would be in the first group? In the second group? You get the idea. We're all different, and that's okay. And talents are very much that way. So it does matter. Our strengths are our multipliers. And I want to make sure that I finish with a story that happened to me in Atlanta a number of years ago. I'm sitting at a table, and there's a college professor there. And you know how sometimes you'll just tell a complete stranger stuff about you. You wouldn't tell, a person in town, because, of course, the person in town will tell everybody. You know what I'm talking about. But this guy had something happen. He was really excited. He was an English professor. And he told me about this teaching award that he had received. But it wasn't that. He said there was a picture of me in the paper, and this was a North Carolina college. And he said, I got a call from a girl. And she said, Dr. Such and Such, are you Mr. Such and Such that used to teach English in, it was a small high school in eastern Pennsylvania? He said, yeah. She goes, I was in your senior English class, and I live in North Carolina, and I saw that, and I thought that might be you. And so they made plans to have lunch. So he had just had lunch with her. And he was telling me about it. He said it was great to see her. He taught English for 7 years, senior English at this small high school when he first started. Then he went to get advanced degrees and ended up in North Carolina. It had been 20-some years since he'd been there. So he meets with this gal who now lives in the same town, and they caught up. But he said, as I got ready to meet with her, I started thinking about that class. We think about classes. We think about kids in classes. We have kids we always want to remember. We have some we can't forget. But at the end of the day, he meets with her for lunch, and they're talking. He was thinking what he used to do is kids used to invite them to graduation parties. They wanted him to come. They liked him. He said he had this one class that she was in, this girl he's meeting, said they loved to talk. They discussed great books. He said, I love that class. He said, nearly all of them invited me to various parties. And he said, I never felt right about going because I couldn't take a gift. I didn't have anything. But he said, then I landed on a gift I started giving them. And he told me what he gave me. He said, the last day of class, I told all of them I wished them great graduation, and I gave them a 4-page handout. And the 4-page handout was entitled 25 Great Books We Never Got to Discuss. So maybe the first one was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and a short paragraph. But there were 4 pages of this. So that was his gift. And then he'd go to the graduation party. Well, he said that on this particular occasion, when he meets this young lady for lunch, he said it was wonderful. He caught up on kids and families that he hadn't talked to in years. And as they finished and concluded lunch, they got up and she started to walk away. She goes, "Wait a minute. I forgot something." Then she walks back. He said she digs down in her purse and she pulls out a 4-page handout that had been folded and unfolded, obviously countless times. The blue ink from that duplicator machine had filtered over, and as she opened it, he could see little comments in each of the paragraphs. She said, she looked at me and she said, "You know, I read every one of these books. When do we get our next assignment?" Yours is the influence that keeps growing. It never ends. You'll never know how far it will take you. Today is a start, and I really applaud that in Director Murnick's advice. Amen. Raise your hand, because you all raised your hand, because you never steal second base if you don't get off first base. So we're all headed towards the next base in a work that is unfolding. So on behalf of all of you and all of the counties that you're from, my favorite places in the world, thank you for participating. And thank you, Kara, for offering, along with your staff, such a great opportunity. Thank you. Oh, wait a minute. I got one more thing. No, I got one more thing. Here, I forgot. I didn't bring this bath and body bag. That's the only one I could find this morning. I'm sorry for those of you who wanted soap. I'm sorry you're left out. I started doing this in classes that I teach at OU, particularly the people I have for 8 months. First assignment is I give everybody a baseball. And what I tell them is, here's your assignment. During the next 8 months, we're going to get to know each other really well. But I want you to take that baseball, and I want you to have people sign that baseball that made a difference in your life. There's an old expression I used to hear growing up. Was, did you ever see a turtle on a fence post? If you did, it didn't get there by itself. And none of you got to where you are by yourself. So I have them sign it, and I say, I want you to at least share one story. I would never ask you to share something that's so personal. And next Saturday, when I have my last class with them, they're going to bring their baseballs. But over the years, as we've done this, who do they share? They share that high school English teacher. They share that coach. They share their parents. They share siblings, grandparents, bosses, colleagues. You are all in a position to help somebody grow and become. You are the baseball signers, and there are also people who have signed your baseball, and as you continue throughout your entire careers, there'll be baseball signatures you'll add. So I'm not going to throw it at you, Kara, but I'm going to give you a baseball because I know that your mom and dad are going to be the first two you put on this baseball.
Thank you.
Okay. Sign it too. And where's Monroe County? Okay. It'll be a ground ball. Okay. Do you work in Monroe County or live there or both? Okay. Well, I like the Zeps too. So here, you'll come up here. This is for Monroe County, and we're going to throw Noble County in. Trust me, there aren't any counties or communities you can talk about where you're from that I haven't been. Can you catch? Okay, well, you know what? I love that. How about anybody here can catch? Oh, my goodness. Okay, you in? Oh, my. Hey, I am not responsible for liabilities. Yay! And I brought one more baseball, no soap. Director, get that English teacher to sign it. And as I tell people, if the person is no longer with us, to sign it, get somebody who knows them and make sure you tell them why you asked them to sign it. And put this on your desk. So when somebody comes, they'll look, they'll go, oh, you got Pete Rose's signature? And you go, no, and they'll pick it up and they'll go, who's Hilda Wilgum Booth? And then you have the chance to share her legacy. Here you go. Thank you. Okay. There we go.
Thank you.
Okay.